Not a good day, is it?
This meeting of the Starkville Board of Alderman will now come to order. Please rise for the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance, to be followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You have before you a copy of the modified written agenda. I have a couple of notes before I open it to the floor. I received advance notice that item 10A, consideration of the approval of special event request for Pumpkin Palooza in the downtown block party, needs to be pulled from the consent agenda. So that item will be taken off of the consent agenda. Also the
entire agenda?
No, off consent. Last notice I had was that it was still on the agenda for consideration. The two employees that were scheduled to be introduced tonight, both were unable to make it, so that matter will not be a part of my comments. Now, are there any proposed revisions from the board?
Mr. Mayor, after citizens' comments, I would like to move Roman numeral matter 10H, discussion of special events application process. I like to hear that before we hear the public appearances. I like to hear that information right after citizens' comments.
All right, so the proposed revision is to move item 10H to item 7C, or do you want it first item under board business?
First item after citizens' comments.
Okay, so you want a new Roman numeral?
Yes, sir, after 6.
All right, so it'd be a new Roman numeral 6, and renumber the remaining Roman numerals, and the Roman numeral 6 would be a sole item, which is the discussion of the special events application process.
Yes, sir.
Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that change to the agenda has been made. Any further proposed revisions? Do we have any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions?
Under, I've got one. Under personnel, item I, request approval to hire Marco Rodriguez and James Hayes to the fire department to consent.
Proposed revision is to place item 11I1, the approval of the hire of Marco Rodriguez and James Hayes to vacant positions in the fire department as presented to the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I forgot one matter.
Yes.
The claims docket, I want to make sure that is not on the consent agenda. C1 on the city clerk. I do not want that on the consent. C1 on the city clerk.
Okay, it is not on the
Okay,
consent
I want to make
agenda.
sure I wasn't clear about the numbering. Okay.
All right, so that matter will remain off. Now, C2
Yes, sir.
is on the consent
yes, sir.
agenda.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have no problem unless the Vice Mayor need to explain this with both of the items on the Budget Committee going on the consent agenda, and yeah, we'll do one at a time. I'm sorry. I have no problem with both those items unless the Budget Committee chairman needs to speak to us about something.
Alderman Sistrunk?
I'm fine with that. I have a separate place where I can make a brief report. So.
All right, the proposed revision from Alderman Perkins is to place items 10E1 and 10E2. That is the approval of budget amendment for fiscal year 2011 as presented, and the renaming of the budget committee to the to the audit and budget committee, and revising duties and responsibilities as presented on the consent agenda. Any objection to that proposed revision? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. And Alderman Sistrunk, the report that you were scheduled to make is still on, if you'd like to report on those matters.
Mr. Mayor, one other item.
Does anyone on the board particularly want to hear the report?
All right, do I hear a proposed revision from Alderman Sistrunk to strike the report?
Sure.
Proposed revision from Alderman Sistrunk is to strike the item that was originally item 10E, report from the Budget Committee, from the agenda. Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been taken off of the agenda. Alderman Perkins?
Mr. Mayor, item D under board business, consideration of making an appointment. Is there just one name? I only remember seeing maybe one name from Ward 3.
There were three.
Oh, there were 3?
There
I'm
were
sorry. I'm sorry, Alderman. But how do you want to handle that?
But there were three very good applicants, and I mean, I'm prepared to make a recommendation on who I would like to see, but the board can vote on it as a whole, or we can put it on consent, however you'd like.
Consent will be fine. If you want to just give us the name and what position, Ward.
I would say Kane Overstreet to the Transportation Committee, and then there were only one each to the Solid Waste Committee, which is Nicholas Wilson and Julia Penley from Wards 2 and 4.
All right, so the proposed revision from Alderman Parker is to place the appointments of Kane Overstreet to the Transportation Commission as the Ward 3 appointee, and appointees from Wards 2 and Ward 4, Nick Wilson from Ward 4, and Julia Penley from Ward 2 to the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee on the consent agenda. Alderman Parker, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Any further proposed revisions?
Mr. Mayor, I think under B here, we just need, if that matter's going to go on the consent agenda, it needs to, I know the information in the package specifies, Ms. Pruitt, correct me if I'm wrong, item B, consideration approval of the closure of Main Street for the annual Pops on the Plaza from Jackson Street to Caldwell East. Is that October the 4th, 2011, from 5 to 7 p.m.? Yes. Mr. Mayor, we could put that on the consent agenda with the date and the time. The date being October the 4th, 2011, the time's from 5 to 7 p.m. That can make the consent. B.
Okay, that one I have on consent right now, but I don't
Okay.
have date and time. Do you want to add the date and time?
Oh, yeah, because sometimes I get a little confused with these little asterisks. That's why I asked the question. Yeah, add the date and time.
Alderman Perkins has proposed revising the consent agenda to revise what was originally matter 10B, the approval of closure of Main Street for Pops on the Plaza, to reflect that will occur on October 4th, 2011, from 5 to 7 p.m. Alderman Perkins, that's your proposed revision?
Yes, sir.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter remains on the consent agenda as revised. Further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Sistrunk to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And you now have before you the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any objection to the approval of the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised is approved. The next matter before you is the consideration of the approval of the August 16th, 2011 minutes.
Move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to approve of the minutes of the recess meeting of the Board of Alderman of the City of Starkville for August 16th, 2011. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. That will take us to announcements and comments. And I have just one scheduled comment tonight, and that is that next Tuesday, September 27th, we will have a bond referendum to attempt to build a new police station. It is bond referendum to issue $8.45 million in bonds for the construction of a police station that would be at the corner of Jackson and Highway 182. This referendum will require 60% plus one of the public's approval to pass, and the polls will open next Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. and will remain open until 7 p.m. The city clerk's office will be open this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. for anyone, or 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. for anyone wishing to cast absentee ballots. And that is all the comments I have tonight. Do we have any comments from the members? Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make two comments about the bond referendum that you just mentioned, which will occur on a week from today, which will be Tuesday, September the 27th of 2011. I know that there are a lot of people who have a great interest in our board meetings on TV and that do watch our board proceedings, and they have done so over the years. So I mainly want to address not only those here, but those who may be tuning in, watching our board meeting. And there are two things that I would like to say. Number one is that I just want to encourage all of the registered voters within the city of Starkville to please go out to the polls and vote on Tuesday, September the 27th of 2011 with regard to the bond referendum that our mayor just alluded to. And secondly and finally, I want to announce the polling locations for those who will be voting in this. I want to remind the viewers and others that your polling place may be different than your polling place where you have previously voted in these local and state-wide elections previously this year. So the polling places are as follows, and I'd like for you to take notes and pay particular attention to the polling places. And your polling place will depend upon the ward that you live in. And those who live in Ward 1 will vote at the National Guard on Highway 12 in our city. The residents who live in Ward 2 will vote at the Sportsplex off of Lynn Lane in Starkville. And those who live in Ward 3 will likewise vote at the Sportsplex off of Lynn Lane in Starkville. The residents who reside and live in Ward 4 in our city will vote right here in this boardroom here, which is the same as the courtroom in City Hall on Lampkin Street here in Starkville. Those who live in Ward 5 will vote at Fire Station number 3 on Highway 389, sometimes referred to as North Jackson Street and the corner of Garrett Road. That's all people and residents and electors, rather, who live in Ward 5. All of my constituents and registered voters who live in Ward 6 will vote at the Mount Pila Church Fellowship Hall, and that is very important because I know I have a lot of residents who live in Rolling Hills, and they'll be quick to tell me that they'll vote at Board Town, but that's not correct. This is a city election. For those of you who live in Ward 6, you will vote at and in the Fellowship Hall at the Mount Pila Missionary Baptist Church, which is located at 840 North Jackson Street. And finally, but not least, Ward 7, and all the registered voters who reside in Ward 7 will vote in the Circuit Court building, which sits at the foot of the hill to the west of the new building that is now accommodated by the Oktibbeha Hall County School System. So those are the polling places for Tuesday, September the 27th in 2011. And in case some of you are late joining, we have a city clerk's office who you can call, and I'm going to give that number because it's a public place, and that's what they're there for, to serve. And their number is 662-323-4813 in case you have any questions about the election. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board?
I have
Alderman
one,
Ball.
Mr. Brewer, you probably been working on this here for Ms. Dora for Geehee off 306 Washington Street. I would like you to investigate that some more, you and the mayor, and then when you find out something else about this water bill, will you please let the mayor and the board know and let myself know so we can look into this. Something concerning me very much about this. And I appreciate it that you follow up on it and look at it and let us know on the next board meeting, October the 4th. Thank you very much.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Alderman Carter.
I'd just like to take this time to commend you and especially the park commissioners and Matthew Rye, even though he's not here, for the Rock in the Park first annual which was this last Saturday, and it was an antique car show. The mayor got in the Duncan booth, and it's just kid-friendly for the family, for everybody involved, the band at Sunset, and look forward to the second annual. It's one of those, we'll talk about quality of life up here on this table, but it was a quality of life issue for the city of Starkville. And also that, I know we already approved it, but Pumpkin Palooza's coming up, and the downtown block party this Friday night. Those are two. I know Pumpkin Palooza is growing hand over foot. It's getting larger every year, but look forward for these two things. If you want to get the family out, if you're looking for things to do in Starkville while you're in town for a ball game, next 2 weekends are going to be big weekends for the partnership and the community. So, thank you.
Do we have any further citizen comments? Or any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll now move to citizens' comments.
Good evening to the mayor and the board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. I'd like to also recognize Vice Mayor Sid Trump and Alderman Vaughn.
Thank you,
Mr.
Alvin.
Turner?
The citizens and taxpayers, we have a few concerns, and we feel like that we will feel better if we I know the hospital, it looks good on the outside, but we would like to see the inside, what the inside look like. The schools, they look good from the outside, but I know we would like to see the inside, to see what the inside of the buildings look like. Last Tuesday, I came and walked through the police department, and it's very frightening. If someone, where the generator is, if they get crazy or whatever, or that side of this building can go up in smoke. Where they keep the ammunition and everything at, if somebody get crazy, or side of the building can go up in smoke. The bathrooms, you need a bathroom for the women and men. We sad that we didn't get the $9 million of the last administration, but our police officers are protect us, and these are some very serious conditions that they have to work and live under. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments tonight? Any further citizen comments?
I'd like to invite everybody to the museum Thursday night. We're going to be showing Movie Goonies outside. The landscape architecture students will be selling hot dogs and burgers and brats beginning at 6. It's great family fun.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Any further citizens' comments? Any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearance. We will move to what was previously item 10H that has been reordered to Roman numeral 6, a discussion of the special events application process. And Alderman Dumas, I believe you put this matter on the agenda. Would you like to introduce it?
I did. Well, I asked Ms. Spruill, there's been several rounds of emails and seeming confusion. I'd like to know, I asked her a couple of things. First and foremost, what's the application process? Who does that process go to, or who does the application go to? How does feedback then go from those in the city to the applicant? And then from that standpoint, how is feedback received, and the second submission, et cetera? Basically up until the point that the board takes the matter up for opinion. So this was a last minute request, and I do appreciate all the work that Ms. Spruill's put into this. So I'm all ears at this point.
Okay, well, let me give you a little bit of history that will be old news to Alderman Corey and Alderman Perkins. But in 2007, actually Bulldog Bash was the reason we began having a special event process, because fortunately, the event has grown rather dramatically over the years, and every year it is a new school or student association president who brings it forward. So when I came on with the board in 2005, we went through a process where everyone was reinventing the wheel every year. And so I started looking into what we could do to facilitate the history of it, so that the student association president and all the others who were having special events, and they were continuing to grow, would have an opportunity to have some history in what they had gone before them, and hopefully make it simpler for us as we go forward. Mostly to facilitate the new student association president to have some background, so that he wouldn't be every year coming forward and having to just reinvent the wheel. So we started a special event process. I pulled up a number of special event applications and policies that I found and melded them together. We had a rather large committee that involved everyone who was currently having a special event at the time. Cotton District Arts Festival, Robbie Ward with the Johnny Cash Festival. We had someone from the university who came out, the partnership. All those folks were involved in Del Cruz. All were involved in developing this policy. So we went round and round and got it to a point where everyone was, we considered comfortable, enough compromise on both sides that the city had protection and the events could move forward and know exactly what it was that was expected of them every time they came forward. So the process is basically that the promoter, whoever that might be, and we have mostly a stable group of people or organizers who come in every year. Cotton District Arts Festival is almost like clockwork because they do pretty much the same thing every year. So it's nothing new for them, and it proceeds rather easily. Sometimes we have new events. Jennifer will be presenting Pumpkin Palooza, which is not brand new, but it's somewhat in the newer phase. The Downtown Block Party, that's fairly new. Bulldog Bash kind of ends up being a new event every year in the sense that it's new to the people bringing it forward, the students who are bringing it forward. So we kind of look at that about the same in terms of educating. But what they do is they go to the building department or they go online and get the permit, which is online. It's also up in the building department, and they fill out the application. And attached to the application is a policy which gives the things that we're interested in having. As you fill it out, these are the things that we need, and it outlines insurance, since insurance was an issue for us today. It outlines the details of the insurance that we sought. When I developed the policy, I developed it with the thought in mind that we would one day be having really large events, which Bulldog Bash has grown to be, a very big event. But so big that, we wanted to make sure we had protections in place. So I made it bigger or more comprehensive, shall we say, than possibly needed to be for smaller events. But with the thought that we also have flexibility built into the policy, so that if we want to do something different, we can, with the guidance of the city attorney, for example, or the guidance of the building department, or whoever's being impacted by it at the time. So you have the policy in front of you, which I provided to y'all as well, but the policy and the application are all in one. And the promoter gets that packet. They then hopefully read the policy and fill out the application, and we schedule a special events committee meeting. So again, before this policy, they were going individually to each department head that would be impacted. They'd go separately to the police, separately to fire, separately to sanitation. And so we had these silos, and a lot of the departments didn't know what the other one was doing. So this was an effort to all get around the same table, coordinate, talk about how each department was impacted by the event and how we could help facilitate this. It's worked out, I think, very nicely. Obviously, there are hiccups with things, but I think it's gone forward fairly well. And we then sit around the table, have those discussions, give feedback. The promoter tells us exactly where things are going to be located, and if there are issues with it, then we will research the issues from our standpoint, in particular SED with the locations of the outlets and how much power is needed and where the people are going to plug up and where the bands are going to be and where the bandstands are located. All those create issues for where power is going to be provided. They may need a generator. They may be able to use the power that we provide by virtue of the poles and the areas that are already set up for events. So we go through that whole process and see where there may be some need for us to come back and look at it again. But for the most part, for example, the Cotton District Arts Festival pretty much does the same thing, so we don't ever really have a second meeting needed. But in some cases, we do come back and visit with it again. And the parties that were in some limbo or flux are the ones that come back and have those secondary discussions. Hopefully, that's all it takes. Now, one of the difficulties that we have had is that a lot of the promoters have some issues with insurance, and a lot of times those insurance carriers don't want to give a policy number and don't want to sign off on the policy until it gets much closer to the event. We've had some of that, and I think that's kind of what transpired for us during this process that we find ourselves coming forward to today. But it's been taken care of now. And from that, I'm not sure what the takeaway is going to be, because I'm not sure how much we get to press the insurance carriers and how far ahead of time they're willing to come forward until we do push hard on them. But I think we've handled it here. Anyway, the individual can come back and visit with each department head if they need to, if there's some particular item that is in question. Last year, we had issue with where the bandstand was going to be located. So that was handled on an individualized basis once it was determined that was the only issue at hand. That ends up being, once those things are met, and we have the department heads have passed off on it, then and only then do we try to bring it to the board, because we really don't want y'all blessing it and giving in-kind services unless it has met the criteria that the city attorney thinks that it should meet in terms of insurance and liability for the city, and the things that the department heads say will need to be met in order for us to be able to handle the project and help the event move along and be the best it can be. So in essence, hopefully before anything gets to you, it's all settled and done, and it's almost a fait accompli. The public appearance allows the promoter to use the camera and the viewing public to see the event, obviously enhancing it, but it also allows y'all to see exactly what's going to happen in case there's something new that you want to participate in or you want to know more about, if it's happening in your ward differently. And that gives y'all a chance to ask those questions. But for the most part, we try to bring it to you so that it is a done deal. And I think that takes you to where the board gets
It
their
does.
hands
Is there
on.
from the time that the promoter meets with the special events committee, is there a document that's sent from the committee to the promoter
There is
detailing all the things that are yet to be determined, or here's the issues as
Yes, there
deemed
is
by the committee?
There is feedback that is provided. Now, Mr. Griffith has been in charge of that. He's been doing that, although Ms. Daniels has been taking that over for the last couple of events. Bulldog Bash was one, and I think she did Pumpkin Palooza and the Downtown Block Party. So he has passed that on to her for her involvement in that, and we do give them the feedback necessary. And if we have not given them feedback, hopefully the communication has been verbal, if not written, but we always try to make it written so they've got something to look at.
Is there a recommended time in the policy where it states where these?
We actually try to get it going 90 days ahead of time, just because of issues like this. But a lot of times the promoters are not real sure. They haven't got their bands locked down. They haven't got some of the vendors locked down. So that tends to be the farthest date from the event that we can really get any idea of what we can work with. But you don't want to shut down the event. You don't want to deter the events. But you do want to have as much information as possible so we can prepare from a police standpoint, from a fire standpoint, make sure that we've got personnel manning those events. So if we have a date and a time and we can begin to work through them, it allows them to flow better.
Who's the point of contact from the city to the promoter?
Well, in the past it's been Mr. Griffith, but now I think Ms. Daniels is going to be the point of contact for special events.
Thank you for pulling this together.
Sure, not a problem. That was actually from memory.
Alderman Perkins.
Ms. Spruill,
Yes, sir.
what information, if any, is in the special events policy that requires those involved to have conversation with the impacted property owner or owners?
Well, I'm not sure that the special event policy actually states that, because that is something obviously we encourage during the special event committee meeting, because you have restaurants that will be impacted by that, particularly in the Cotton District. So we always encourage those promoters to get in contact with all the affected property owners, because they're in essence closing down their access to their property in a lot of cases. And we rely on them to do that because it is not a city event. We certainly facilitate and sponsor to a certain extent, but we have not felt that it was incumbent on us to get in touch with each property owner because that's a rather onerous task, but we do encourage that during the special event committee meeting.
Right, and understand, so you encourage the promoters and the sponsors, so to speak, you encourage them to meet with the property owners that may be impacted by the event.
Absolutely.
Okay, and you do that in every case without making any exception in terms of encouraging?
In my recollection, yes.
Right.
We have talked to them about making sure that they talk in particular to the businesses that are going to be impacted by this.
And we have not, to your recollection, made any exception of speaking with the impacted property owners, to your recollection?
To my recollection, no, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
Let me ask Ms. Brewer while she's here. I want to get a jump start on this. Let me ask you one question, Ms. Brewer. This is relevant to the special event. And we're not going to get into full discussion, but is there any information as I get ready to hear these next three requests for in-kind services? And I've read this after I think we talked earlier, and I think I know the answer, but I want you to just articulate it to me, and I think there is a distinction. I want you to share with me very briefly and to the point what distinction, if any, that you can make for the in-kind service request that was made by the museum versus those made by the other two organizations for those special events.
Yes, the in-kind services the museum is requesting are related to capital improvements. They are in phase 3 of their capital improvement project, and the services that they're requesting end up being some labor and some materials from us. This is an interlocal agreement that we have with the county. The county shares in part of the cost of the museum, as you know, in supporting the museum, as does the city. So these are capital improvements as opposed to city services associated with an event.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer.
Yes, sir.
We'll now move to public appearances, and we have 2 public appearances scheduled tonight. The first is from Jennifer Gregory on behalf of the Main Street Association to talk to us about 2 events. One that is scheduled to occur this Friday and the Downtown Block Party, and then a later event, Pumpkin Palooza. Ms. Gregory.
Thank you all for your time tonight. Hopefully the special events package answered most of the questions that you have about the event. The Downtown Block Party, the first event being considered, this is the 2nd annual event. The other, Pumpkin Palooza, this is the 3rd annual event. Both of these events bring a great deal of exposure and retail and restaurant sales to the businesses downtown. Additionally, Pumpkin Palooza was this year featured in Mississippi Magazine, which is the first statewide feature stories that the community of Starkville has seen in such a publication in quite a while. So we're very pleased with that. So not only do these events provide activities for visitors to the area as well as residents of the area, but they also benefit, again, like I said, the restaurants and retailers downtown, and provided a great deal of exposure to the community. Specifically, Pumpkin Palooza, we have reports from retailers that was their best evening of sales in the entire fall season last year, in several years. Similarly, restaurants, we actually asked several of our restaurants to pull their sales numbers from these events as compared to other comparable Mississippi State home football game weekends that did not have such an event, and the sales far surpassed those on the evenings of the events than those evenings without the event. So we think these are great for the community, and we certainly couldn't have these events without your support, specifically the Starkville Electric Department and the Police Department. We know that closing off the streets does provide some sort of inconvenience to drivers of the area, but we try to put the word out well in advance, and we feel like we've done that, and we appreciate your consideration of support and hope that you'll continue to support these events. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you all might have.
Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Gregory? Alderman Perkins.
Ms. Gregory, Has your organization made any request to the, may not be the new name, the VCC, Visit Convention Council, or any other entity for any funds that you're now seeking from the city?
No, sir, we've not requested funds specifically for these services, but the VCC does financially support both of these events, as well as membership dues from the Main Street Association, but we've not requested funding for these specific services.
Does the Downtown Association not have any funds to defray these in-kind services?
We do have funding, sir, but our funding is quite limited. We're a new, the responsibilities have transferred from the Downtown Business Association to the Main Street Association. Our funding consists of membership dues and fundraisers, basically. So our funding is quite limited, and it would be quite difficult for us to pay these costs. And we similarly view this as a partnership. When the city of Starkville supports these events, we look at that as Starkville, as the city of Starkville, doing a large part for tourism. Again, these events couldn't happen without your services, and we feel like that partnership between the city, the Greater Starkville Development Partnership, and Mississippi State University, because they participate in both of these events, is key to the success of tourism in our area. And while we all have very strapped budgets, and I know that the city does as well, we respectfully request your support, not only financially, but the message that your financial support sends for tourism in the area.
I have nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Dumas.
Jen, I just want to thank you for coming. I'll say that the modest amount that you're seeking is exponentially recouped in tourism dollars, and I really appreciate that, and that goes for both events, really. As Ben said, it's really welcoming to look into Mississippi Magazine and see things that are happening, and that people are really capturing the style and the event of things that's happening here, so greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comment? Alderman Carver.
I've got to ask my question for any event that's coming up. But y'all have a plan for the trash pickup? And, you know, we had that one instance, not with y'all, but we want to make sure that we get downtown cleaned up before the next morning.
Absolutely, and that's important to us as well. We do have plans for that, and for both of these events, we don't, for Pumpkin Palooza specifically, we don't sell a great deal of food. We encourage people to eat in the restaurants. For Downtown Block Party, there are vendors selling food. There are Main Street members, or Main Street restaurants that are selling that food. So there is a small amount of food being sold, which leads to trash. But we appreciate the requested services of the city sanitation, and we also encourage our attendees to recycle. We'll have recycling bins set up from Green Starkville, and we encourage that. But absolutely.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Jen, I'd just like to say thank you. You're doing an excellent job. I have received compliments from people all over the state about the insert of the schedule of fall Friday night events before football games this year, and have been told by people that they're coming into town a night earlier than they would have because they want to participate in these events. That is economic development for this community. Football season in Starkville is by far and away our biggest tourism season.
Absolutely.
And to the effect that we can get people to come a day early and hopefully stay a day late, that is more money coming into this community from someplace else and staying in this community, and events like the ones you're planning are helping to make that a reality.
Thank you. We appreciate y'all's partnership and look forward to your continued support. Thank you. Thanks.
Our second public presentation is Rhett Hobart for Bulldog Bash.
Thank you all for having me tonight. Also with me, my Chief Programming Officer, Emily Nations, who oversees Bulldog Bash with me. Our directors are here, Thomas Griffin, Daniel Fisher, the directors of the event this year. We're excited to come to you all tonight to present information regarding the 12th Annual Bulldog Bash. As you all well know, it's grown exponentially as we discussed over the years of its history. We're expecting this year to be the largest yet. If you're looking at the event and as a whole, This is the largest year we've ever had as far as fundraising. We're excited about that. In doing that, we're able to bring larger bands in, larger name bands from around the country, get multiple headlining acts, and we are really excited about signing some major corporate sponsors for this year's event to help us in making it larger, make it even better. This year's event is on November 11th. That is the night prior to the MSU versus Alabama football game. We're excited about having that weekend. With Tuscaloosa being so close, we're expecting a really large turnout to come over from Tuscaloosa for the event that night. We've secured two great national headlining groups. The first being the Avett Brothers, and the second being country star Jake Owen. Jake Owen actually is the #1 country album in the country right now, so we're excited about that. And both of them are very, very well known nationally, especially amongst the college population. So we're excited about that. Throughout this year's event, we're also having, again, our fanfare for families in the community. We signed on Regis Bank this year supporting that to make it bigger and better for our families in the community to come out. We're going to have inflatables out there and vendors selling food and things throughout the night for that early on in the evening. So we're excited for that. We're going to start our music early for that, as well as have, again, our pep rally out there for the football game with Coach Moan and the team to really bring the families in the Cotton District for the night. So we're excited about the event and the opportunity as for this year. We thank the city for their partnership for us this year in our 11-year history already, and we look forward to working with y'all in the future. So I'll be happy to take any questions y'all might have.
Do you have any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Perkins.
just have one question. I'm going to discuss both of these matters individually. Mr. President, you've heard our Chief Administrative Officer speak as to our encouraging the sponsors of these and promoters of these programs to talk with the business owners that are or may be impacted by these events. My question to you, first of all, depending on the first one, I have the next question. So have you talked with all of the business owners in the affected area of the Bulldog Bash with relationship to that event?
We do. We have a process we work through for that. We actually have already met with the ones directly surrounding the stage, where it's actually going to be blocked off earliest in the day. I've met with Mr. Fant at Bulldog Deli, as well as other people in that area right there. We actually have a process we put into place last year after this discussion came forth to invite all our business owners out a month prior to the event to our office and have a full discussion about the event. So we have talked to them briefly. They're aware of the event. We have signs up in their businesses around the Cotton District area and all their windows. And we'll be having one full meeting a month prior to the event.
I guess my question, maybe I wasn't clear. My question is have you talked with all of the business owners that will be impacted by the Bulldog Bash in the Cotton District?
Yes, sir, I believe we have.
Have you talked to the former mayor, Mr. Dan Kemp?
I believe we have, yes, sir.
Well, I talked with him this afternoon. He told me to share that with you, that you have not spoken with him. And he owns a lot of the business property, and I'd like for y'all to be honest with me and straightforward when you come up here and talk to us.
Yes, sir.
So he asked me to share that with you.
Right.
And matter of fact, I just talked with him minutes before the board meeting. That's why I asked you that question, see what answer I would get. And he told me to share that with you, that you have not talked with our former mayor. Is there any reason you have not talked with
We
him?
actually have a list of about 600 sponsors from the city that we deal with, and Thomas and Daniel work on that all summer long, starting last May, and they go through and call all those people. We have gone through and contacted every person on the list, either left a message there for a callback and sent them a packet in the mail. So they have all been contacted. Whether or not we've actually talked to them face to face, I'm not sure, but he has been contacted from the Student Association.
Well, let me just respectfully encourage you. I think it is very essential. I'm going to respectfully request that you talk with him because he is a major property owner out there, and he owns a lot of business out there, and he's a major factor out there in terms of a business owner. So I take it that you devote the necessary time to talk with him as expeditiously as possible.
Yes, sir.
And any other business owner that you have not spoken to, leaving a message is not going to cut it. Ms. Brewer said they encourage you to speak with and talk with, so we need to get all that done.
Absolutely.
And I just say this respectfully. I'm not trying to demean you. I just wanted to share that with you.
Absolutely.
Alderman Davis.
I'll say the same thing I said to Jen. When we moved back here, I think Bulldog Bash, I don't know who was the act that year. I don't know. But I would dare to say that Bulldog Bash is now the flagship event that this community puts on. Well, we help put on, we support, whatever you want to call it, throughout the year. And fortunately, 2 years ago, I got to witness it from the top of Dan's blue building. I'm colorblind, so I don't know what color it was. Anyway, at that point, it became eye-opening to me how significant this event was, to see it from above. This year, I'm a huge Avett Brothers fan, huge fan. So I'm really looking forward to the event, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing. And keep going. I mean, this is really great. And I think, you know, when you look at the marketing techniques that Jen and that others around town are looking at, when you look at the fact that, you know what, we may have lost 2 games already, but there's still tremendous momentum in this community from a tourism standpoint. It's events like this that make it even better. And so, job well done.
Thanks. Any further questions or comments?
I have one. And it relates to the last time y'all were here,
Right.
which was to talk about the 2% budget and those dollars. And at that time, you indicated that your focus of your monies were going to be on student events, and that there wasn't even a widow's mite there to share with the community for some things that didn't directly impact the city. We also have a pretty tight budget here in the city of Starkville, and this is an event that we have not increased our budget for police department overtime and other departments for the overtime that are going to be incurred on behalf of your events. These are great events. We're glad to have them in the community. Tell me why I should vote yes to provide services for your event, as well as one where a group does join with us in providing services and marketing and that sort of thing.
You know, we do receive 2% funding, and we use that to our best ability to bring events to the community, bring things for the community. For this event, not only are we using $75,000 from 2% funding, we've also fundraised nearly $140,000 more dollars. We're putting nearly $200,000 in the Cotton District that night for one event. So, you know, we feel like we're putting a lot of money in the Cotton District for that night, estimating to bring in around 35,000 people for that one night that are going to be spending money in the community, in the Cotton District, you know, at our restaurants, at our different areas around there, really adding to our tourism aspect of that. Last year, we had people actually send us emails who actually, one girl flew in from Jacksonville, Florida, and one girl from Phoenix, Arizona to watch Jason Mraz. So it's getting us national recognition as far as the events we have, not only Bulldog Bash, but the ones Jen has as well, making us have great tourism events on our weekends in Starkville, bring people into the community early to give back to 2%, raising money, spending money in the city that will in turn create more 2% dollars for the future.
Do you know how much 2% money you'd have to generate to cover our cost of the services we'll be providing?
I believe the service is around $8,000. I'm not sure exactly how that works with 2%.
With sales tax and our traditional sales tax and the 2% money, it would have to be almost $500,000 in incremental revenues, additional revenues that aren't already being spent in the community.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions or comments? Alderman Carver?
Get back to what I said at the previous public appearance. First of all, how you doing? Thank you. And thank you for doing this every year. One of the reasons I think that the Bulldog Bash is growing is back to this whole trash thing. Is y'all get out there and you take care of the community before, after. And just I'm kind of requesting and making a personal initiative of you, if you could, with the event, and I was with Jeremiah to see people, this is not people just in the street. People are just trying to find a place anywhere they can. So with that, you're going to have, I know the Student Association goes through at the end of the night, and I've seen them just walk through all the different, alleys and the leeways of the Cotton District. But if y'all would try to make a personal initiative to clean it back up, and you always do, but I always have to say it, and thank you for doing this. And we'll see you down there.
Thanks.
Any further comments from the members of the board?
If there's anybody wondering how to clean up trash, they ought to watch those guys. Because I'll say I enjoy the event so much, I've seen them clean up a few times early morning, and I've seen it, and it's they've got a good process.
We're 500 volunteers strong after the event, so.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have done an excellent job planning the event. I always really look forward to not only the event, but the discussion of the event. It reminds me of my time in college. I got to spend a little time helping plan this event, and it's amazing to see how much it has grown and how much better it was than we were doing it when I was in school. So you guys have carried on a legacy that hopefully will carry on far into the future quite well. Thank you very much for what you're doing in our community.
Thank you all.
And that will take us to board business. The first matter before you for your discussion is a report from the Chief Administrative Officer on the status of the H&H study on Carpenter.
No.
No, you got the.
Consideration of the
Oh, I'm sorry. That was originally on consent. Yes, you have the consideration of the approval for Pumpkin Palooza and Downtown Block Party.
Move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of the special events request for Pumpkin Palooza scheduled for October 14, 2011, the Downtown Block Party scheduled for September 23, 2011, and the authorization of in-kind services valued at $2,323 to be provided by the city as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Alderman Vaughn.
Can I ask the chief administrator a question before we vote?
Sure.
Ms. Brewer, on the in-kind service for this year, how many have we had? How many have we had, and the dollar figure on it? Do you have that information?
Oh, Alderman, I am so sorry. I don't believe I can comfortably give you a figure on what we've done thus far this year. This one, plus the ones that are associated with Downtown Block Party and Pumpkin Palooza are approximately $11,000. I don't remember what the Cotton District Arts Festival was. If we're speaking fiscal year, I can tell you these, because that'd be the total for the upcoming fiscal year, but I don't know what the Cotton District Arts Festival was. I'm so sorry. I can certainly have that answer for you shortly.
Will you get that information? Will you put it in my box, please, on all the in-kind service that we have had this year?
Yes, sir.
Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, I certainly want to appreciate all the efforts that those involved in our city do and try to do. And with regard to this particular request, we have a lot of governmental needs in our city, and it takes a lot of money to operate our city. There are a lot of needs in our city that are lacking at this time. There are a lot of capital improvement needs, there are a lot of infrastructure needs, and there are a lot of other needs. Now, it is my personal opinion that the matter that's before us right now, and I address these individually, that this matter is the equivalent of our giving an outside contribution. That's what this is tantamount to, of giving this group $2,323. There's been discussion about how this promote economic development and tourism. Now, in this city, there is in place through legislation and the law that is passed with regard to the 2% tax, and we must be reminded about the distribution of those funds, and those funds are distributed as follows. 40% goes to the Parks Commission, 20% goes to Mississippi State, and I think I remember their budget, they're going to get about $290,000 to $300,000 this year. We'll talk about that later. 15% goes to the OCEDA, that's 75%. 15% goes to the Visit and Convention Council, that's 90%. And then the city of Starkville only gets 10%, and now when we get that 10, then we have groups and entities and organizations come up here asking us for handouts. You know, we just don't have that kind of money, and no disrespect to those requestors, but as a member of this governing body, you know, I am particularly charged with the duty to ensure that we spend these money wisely. It's no dispute about the service rendered, the value of the service. I asked the requester on this particular agenda item, has any request been made to the VCC? You know, I've seen reports where they have, I think, just made disbursements of funds to different organizations or entities, if I am correct, and I stand to be corrected. So I think that, you know, this organization, in my opinion, and I say respectfully, you know, among others, need to start looking at those type of groups. You know, we, in our budget, made some cutbacks on outside contributions this time because of the impact it has on our budget. I think down to the budget committee, I couldn't make the last meeting, but I think we're down to about $11,000. But certainly with regard to be appropriate, but certainly with regard to this request, I think that's another line item that this needs to come from. I know it may be unpopular to some to speak against this, but let me just talk about Alderman Perkins personally. You know, I don't look at the popularity of these things versus the unpopularity of them. I just call it as I see it. So, and one thing I want to fast forward to right now, and I know we're not on that, but let me take one agenda item at a time. But I want to encourage my colleagues that we need to have a stopping point for these in-kind services. They detrimentally and significantly impact our operations. You know, we in our city, and I remember some discussion, some meetings ago, there came up a road in one of my wards and other wards. I see them throughout the city. And you know, you get 500 feet paved of this road, a fourth of a road, a tenth of a road. That's why we don't have the money to do that now. Because when people come up here and ask us for money, we don't, in my opinion, know how to say no. Now, you know, it doesn't matter with me that the votes, in my opinion, may be in place for this, but it's my job, and that's why I'm still here, and thankful to my constituents of Ward 6 keep sending me here. I'm going to continue to fight for the taxpayers. I'm going to continue to demand accountability. I'm going to continue to demand that the money of the taxpayers, who all this money belongs to, is conservatively spent. And this is not a conservative expenditure of funds if this money is awarded and appropriated, as it probably will be in a few seconds. So I think that this entity needs to start looking at other places to get money for its operations. And we need to just start taking a tough stance and use this money for much needed places. We got a brand new fire station out there that we need personnel for. We have a lot of things in our city that we need to fund. You know, we are struggling on operations, but somebody come up here want $2,900 and so many dollars, $2,323, and we get another request for $8,800, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. But, you know, I would like to encourage my colleagues to let's defeat this and respectfully request for these requesting parties and persons to find other places, because we just, in my opinion, do not have the monies and the funds to donate, and this is the tantamount, which I have always called a handout, giveaway of taxpayers' money. And so this is something that we should not do. We should be fiscally conservative when it comes to the taxpayers' money, because we are the guardians over the taxpayers' purse. And for those reasons, we need to defeat this request. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Divins.
I'm gonna put on two hats here. One's gonna be my city hat, and one's gonna be the chairman as I sit as chair of the VCC, which gets 15% of 2% money. In contrast to the question of defeat, I want us to realize that the only way to make money from the 2% side is by spending money on the 2% side. There's really no way around the fact that these tourism dollars and these events, and like I said, Bulldog Bash is the premier event of the entire year. With all due respect to $500,000, it's hard pressed to find the value of the coverage of Bulldog Bash, of the coverage of Pumpkin Palooza, and of the ancillary impacts that all of these events have on the city of Starkville. It's hard to put a value on that. And when we as a community want to sit back and negate the fact that we don't support these, and even support them by $2,000, I mean, what's $2,000 when every one of us that sit on this table and have children can go downtown in Halloween and our kids have a good time, downtown is packed, and it's just a tremendous event for the entire season. Just the same as Bulldog Bash. I saw just as many other SEC shirts last year at Bulldog Bash than I did see the ones that we played the next day, because the year before, people who were here that went to the event knew that they wanted to come back to it and came back for it. You can't put a value on that. And for us to sit here and talk about $10,000 on events that have transformed our community and even have the conversation of denial is frankly what this community was 15 years ago and what we've spent the last 10 years trying to overcome. And that's a shame. So I guess with all due respect, I ask that we not defeat these items.
Further discussion.
I called a question, Mr. Mayor.
Any objection to voting at this time? Any objection to voting? Seeing none, we'll now move into a vote on Alderman Divins' motion. We'll take this one by show of hands. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Raise them high. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 5-2, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of the special, sorry, I did it again. The report from the Chief Administrative Officer on the status of the H&H study for Carver Ditch.
For the item listed on the agenda, the answer to that is that the H&H study is ongoing. We should have results within a month, and at that time, the engineer will come forward and make a report to the board. However, I believe, having spoken with Alderman Perkins, that he wants a little more than that, and so I don't know if he wants to ask questions or if he wants me to provide information based on something that is in front of you, which is a study that I did as it relates to the Carver Ditch and how the FEMA visit came into town. So, Alderman?
Mr. Mayor, may I recognize you?
You may.
Ms. Pruitt, I'm going to cut through because we got a lot more agenda items that are going to require some discussion. Let me just kind of talk. I'm not going to take my time to articulate the course, let me just go a little bit longer. There are some, I'm just going to kind of collectively sum things up, okay, in the interest of time. There's a letter that you provided to us dated, that was from, I think, from the engineer in Jackson, MEMA, the letter that you wrote to MEMA and asked him about the status of the letter and the report when we may hear from them. Because my inquiry to you was to give a report on the Carver Drive ditch, and as of yesterday, that we have not received a response that I'm aware of from MEMA. And I want you to address that in just a few seconds very briefly. And also I ask you to, in your report that's at the table in our earlier guide, as to how did MEMA and or any other federal official get involved in the Carver Drive ditch. And I told you respectfully, and that's all you could tell me, that I am not convinced that the federal and the state official just walked up on the Carver Drive ditch that is in an area of town or in a location that has no national, local, or statewide significance or level of interest. You know, the gentleman you mentioned in your correspondence had contacted Mr. Griffith, our city planner, on January 6th of 2011, say he wanted to do a community visit, but you know, and your materials reference that he wanted to do a community visit because there was some discussion about some floodplain over on the newly road to be newly built for the Garrett Road. So, and my thing to you is, I want to, in answering the question about when we're going to get the report in, and we need to get an answer to that letter. I ask you to. And this is no hostile inquiry here, but we need to get a response to that letter because we need to get Carver Drive ditch moving, because I'm of the opinion, and so are my constituents, that this matter is being just stonewalled, it's being sidelined because of this apparent federal bureaucracy. Now, I also ask you to, and I'm speeding, trying to get all this in quickly here, I also ask you to, who brought these people here? I mean, somebody brought them here, because there's no way I'm going to believe that those people from Jackson, well, we're going to go see the Carver Drive ditch today. I mean, you know, come on with it. I mean, nobody knows about no Carver Drive ditch. And then we get some sophisticated study that we don't seem to get an answer for, like other projects, like the Reed Road widening project, when we needed the right-of-way over at the Carrington Nursing Home. We got in touch with those guns quick. Why? Because there was a high level of interest, but we're not getting things like we need here. And this project has been sidelined. Seemed like that the people over there have been forgotten. They have been neglected, and there's no lack of interest. I mean, we are part of the city, and we need some answers. And I do want this matter to stay on the agenda for each regular scheduled meeting of this mayor and board. And I told you how I want it to be worded on each meeting. So I guess my question to you is very briefly, we could spend a lot of time on this subject matter, but I want you to make sure, number one, that we get a response from this gentleman. And I do want to know at some point in time who invited these people to the city, because I'm just not going to believe this guy sent a letter saying he's going to make a visit, then he goes to the Carver Drive ditch, and then going to say, well, we got to have an H&H study, because I'm not aware of other locations where that was done. So my thing to you, Ms. Brewer, is, now you tell us it's gonna be about 6 to 8 weeks before we can get the results. So once we get the results, to your knowledge, I know you're not the engineer, but I specifically want you to give this report. So once we get that, then that'll determine what happens next, right?
Yes, sir. Once we get the H&H study, then the results of that will be sent to FEMA. And they are, in fact, a minimum of 60 days. I did find another contact person who is a regional contact person in Atlanta. And he said it is a minimum of 60 days from the time they receive our information to when they can turn it around and give us a response.
60?
60 days,
Right.
yes, sir.
And
That's a
Ms. Brewer-
minimum of 60 days.
Ms. Brewer, let me ask you one other question. Now, am I correct to understand you that no city official, department head or otherwise, called or contacted MEMA or any agency or board or commission and told them to come over to Carver Drive?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So when they came down here for Garrett Road, how did they end up over there?
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
You ready for me?
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
What I referenced in my message to, or in my memo to you, was that I was speculating that because Garrett Road had shown a high level of interest from those who were involved in being located near it. If you recall, Mr. Ibendahl got in
Right.
touch with FEMA and MEMA in an attempt to make sure that we were not violating the floodplain area when we were expanding Garrett Road. My speculation was that that might have heightened our visibility as it relates to the city of Starkville and MEMA and FEMA and their obligations to us. They have a requirement, and I included that in your memo.
I saw it. Go
the
ahead. I got it. Go
CFR,
ahead.
that they visit the floodplain areas of their state every 5 years. It had been 8 years since they visited us. So we were on time target to be visited. The last one prior to that had been 10 years, and the one prior to that was 5 years. But once Katrina kicked in and we began to have some issues with flooding, I think their manning and staffing personnel were increased, and they were able to get to areas that they had let linger for a period of about 8 years. So we were due for that. Now, we also have been encouraging both Mr. Kemp and Mr. Griffith to get to MEMA and FEMA training, which is actually where Mr. Griffith is right now, so that we will have some certified floodplain individuals within the city so that we can be better educated and better understand our obligations. And I'm not extremely well versed in how this works, but it's not unlike the fire rating. If we get a good rating, our insurance, our flood insurance, goes down or is maintained.
Okay, right, I'm familiar with all that. Now, so in the interest of time, what I would like respectfully request, Ms. Rule, keep this on the agenda for each meeting. I'm not going to, we're not going to rehash everything out every time, but stay on top of this. I mean, the clock is ticking.
Yes, sir.
The one is here. That sets me off until another year. I mean, you know, we got rich history when it gets wet. If a little water in the ditch, we don't work, okay?
Yes, sir.
So let's keep, I need a response to that letter that been, you sent on August the 22nd, 23rd, 2011. If they got that much staff, I mean, they should respond to a letter quickly, but get us a response and just give us an update at every meeting until this project is completed.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer.
Respectfully, may I?
Yes,
say
oh,
one
sorry,
more
I'm
thing?
sorry.
I spoke with Mr. Goodman yesterday, because he's the one to whom I addressed this letter and requested what the status was. And he didn't recall receiving my letter. He said, I'm sure I probably did, and I may have passed it on. So I don't know how much influence I will have in getting a written response from him. But he was the one who handed me the name of the contact in Atlanta. So I at least made some progress in that regard, but I will contact Mr. Goodman again and ask him if he can give me a written response of some kind.
And lastly, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Brewer, the reason I want this on the agenda, you know, we all have to look out for our awards. You know, this may not be important to some as it is to me, but I'm going to continue to support these type matters throughout the city. So let's continue to get those updates, Ms. Brewer. I look forward to being on each agenda.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, the next matter on the agenda is the consideration of the special event request for Bulldog Bash.
Move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of the special event request by Red Hobart on behalf of the Student Association for approval of Bulldog Bash and in-kind services from the city of Starkville in the amount of $8,794.94 as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Discussion. Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, did we leave the museum on the consent agenda?
We did.
Okay, well, that's fine, but let me say something about the museum. Not let me make a comment. I'm gonna have to start asking more questions, Ms. Brewer. These asterisks confuse me as long as on this agenda. But let me make one distinction here. And I thought that was off the consent agenda, but I was wanting it to be off, but I just want to say this. I'm in support of the in-kind since we skipped that, and it's related to this discussion because there's a distinction here because that pertains to the capital improvement versus special event. Now, so I'm in favor of that matter. Now, as to the Bulldog Bash, let me just briefly say, Mr. Mayor, and I really appreciate the young people here. I appreciate their level of energy and their level of enthusiasm and their high level of motivation for being involved in this to get this done. And in no way do I want to deter you from any future matter or thing that may pertain to the university. But I would like to just briefly say this, and I must inform you respectfully that I cannot support this for these reasons. Number one is that during the prior years that administration before this one went in and revised the 2% formula. At that time, Mississippi State University was not getting any money at all. So we revised the formula, which I supported, for Mississippi State to receive money for student-related activities, and now they get 20% of that money. And so it is my opinion, and along with my constituents, that that 20% should be used for student-related activity, and this is a student-related activity. Now, the Student Association, from my recollection at the budget presentation, is getting projected at least $290 or almost $300,000 from our 2%. So that's what that money is for. Now, in light of the fact that the Student Association is getting 20%, now they're before our board asking us to give them some of our 10%. And, and again, that leaves us with a minimal amount. And I understand about economic development and growth. That's why we have this planning and budgetary process. Because, if we're going to start giving this level of money away, then perhaps we need to go back to the legislature and ask them to revise the formula so we can have more money. But again, now this is almost $10,000 that we need for our city. And this is just, in my opinion, is having a tremendous impact on our level of operation. The student body has plenty of money. I mean, they got 200, they may have budgeted for something else, but they can amend their budget just like we amend our budget. And so that's what I encourage them to do, to find other sources. I asked the gentleman at the onset of our discussion, there's been a conversation with the impacted property owners, and I was led to believe from my listening that they had all been spoken with, but I was learned during the discussion that all the property owners have not been impacted, and we discussed one particular property owner in the Cotton District, and that property owner did ask me to share that with you and did call me, and I had no objection because my interest is to the betterment of the city, including those business owners and the taxpayers. This is a very healthy request. I am of the opinion that the Student Association should consult with their academic and advisors and other sponsors and advisors there about going into their budget and using some of their almost $300,000 to pay for this. And we appreciate what you're doing, but we're already giving the Student Association, allowing them to receive $300,000 from the revenue that comes into our city. So we cannot continue to fund these things. We're going to be broke. We're not going to have any money in the bank. We just have so many requests that comes to us, and certainly the request from the museum is clearly distinguishable because it's a capital improvements matter. And this is a special event. So again, I must say that we appreciate your interest, but for those reasons, I think that you need to find funding, and if the board approves it by a majority vote tonight, I'm requesting at least for you to take back to your advisors and other sponsors as to the comments, at least, that were made by the board, and I'll share that with them the next time that they're here. And I know in some of the past boards, there's been some discussion about various things about the monies that's been donated and earmarked and allocated to the student association. But again, you have plenty of money available to you, and I don't think that the city needs to appropriate any additional money. So for those reasons, I'm going to not support this matter.
Further discussion. Alderman Corey.
I just want to thank y'all for coming out here tonight and putting this event on again. I've had the pleasure of attending it before and plan to do so again. And just as I have seen this Board of Aldermen unanimously approve both this event and the in-kind services for it every year since I've been on the board, since 2005, I will be happy to do so again this year.
Further discussion. Alderman Carver.
For clarification, our percentage of 2% has to be used for what, just economic development and tourism?
Economic
promotion?
development, tourism.
So if we didn't use this money, I mean, what would it go? We couldn't repave a road with it or any percentage?
Well, no, that can be considered economic development.
Okay. And then I guess while we're addressing the situation, I'd probably be on board. Alderman Perkins has some good points, and I'd probably be on board if we petition legislature. Is that done once every 10 years, or is that
It
done?
comes up in 2014.
2014. Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll now move into a vote on the special event, or on the motion, Alderman Dumas's motion, and we'll take this one by show of hands. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Aye. Aye. Are you up or down? All right. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. Do I have any abstentions? All right. By a vote of 4 in favor, with 2 against, and with 1 abstention, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval of the City of Starkville claims docket for all departments except the fire department as of September 29th, 2011. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor, may I recognize?
You may.
Ms. Outlaw, very quickly, 2 questions. Number 1, is there, I know there are legal requirements you have to pay for the bond referendum, like, legal notice requirement, announcement in the paper maybe as to the date of the bond referendum and the polling location. So apart from that, is there anything in the claim docket that purports or you're representing to pay that is associated with any other matter pertaining to the bond election?
No, that's gonna be it.
Okay, and if anything comes forward in that claims docket, and I'm kind of holding off consent just for the next couple of meetings, I have a request for you to let all of us know, okay?
Okay.
Okay, and all the claims in this claim docket are legal expenditures.
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Perkins to approve of the City of Starkville claims docket for all departments except the fire department as of September 29th, 2011. Alderman Perkins, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Perkins, do you wish to speak on the matter?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Perkins' motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that exhausts the open session portion of our agenda. We do have 2 matters for potential discussion in executive session. A motion to go into closed session to discuss whether there is need for an executive session would be in order.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Alderman Corey to move into closed session to discuss whether there is a need to go into executive session. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the matter?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll now move into closed session, and I'll ask everybody to leave the room. And without objection, I'm going to move us into a brief recess. Seeing no objection, board will stand in recess.